The pineal eye. Given a certain latitude of interpretation, the entire conception, and at the same time the obsession, expressed by the image of the pineal eye and explained below, goes back to the beginning of the year 1927, exactly during the period in which I wrote The Solar Anus. In other words, a year before the eye appeared to me to be definitively linked to bullfighting images. I believe it necessary to furnish this chronological data before going on to considerations of a very general order, because those considerations present indissoluble links with facts as insignificant as a series of images. The pineal eye probably corresponds to the anal, in other words nocturnal, conception that I initially had of the sun, and that I then expressed in a phrase such as, quote, the intact anus, to which nothing sufficiently blinding can be compared except the sun, even though the anus is the night, end quote. I imagined the eye at the summit of the skull like a horrible erupting volcano, precisely with the shady and comical character associated with the rear end and its excretions. Now, the eye is without any doubt the symbol of the dazzling sun, and the one I imagined at the summit of my skull was necessarily on fire, since it was doomed to the contemplation of the sun at the apogee of its brilliance. The imagination of the ancients attributed to the eagle as solar bird the faculty of contemplating the sun face to face. In the same way, an excessive interest in the simple representation of the pineal eye is necessarily interpreted as an irresistible desire to become a sun oneself. A blind sun or a blinding sun, it hardly matters. In the case of the eagle, as in the case of my own imagination, the act of directly looking is the equivalent of identification. But the cruel and shattering character of this absurd desire soon appears due to the fact that the eagle is cast down from the heights of the skies, and as for the eye that opens in the middle of the skull, the result, even imaginary, is much more terrifying, though horribly ridiculous. During this period, I did not hesitate to think seriously of the possibility that this extraordinary eye would finally really come to light through the bony roof of the head, because I believed it necessary that, after a long period of servility, human beings would have an eye just for the sun, whereas the two eyes in their sockets turn away from it with a kind of stupid obstinacy. I was not insane, but I made too much of the necessity of leaving, in one way or another, the limits of our human experience, and I adapted myself in a fairly disordered way, so that the most improbable thing in the world, the most overwhelming as well, something like foam on the lips, would at the same time appear to me to be necessary. I imagined on the one hand plants, which are uniformly animated by a vertical movement analogous to that of tides, which regularly elevate water, and on the other hand, animals, which are animated by a horizontal movement analogous to that of the turning earth. I thus arrived at reductions that were extremely simple and geometric, but at the same time monstrously comic. For example, I saw that the alternating movement of all the coituses on the surface of the earth is similar to that of locomotive pistons, so that the continual movement of coituses on the surface of the earth is as closely tied to the earth's rotation as the movement of pistons is to that of wheels. Man appears in this brutal system as an animal exceptionally animated by the erection movement that projects plants in a vertical direction, comparable to the male animal who raises himself on his hind legs when mounting the female, but much more categorically erect as a penis.